Listen, if it's any solace for Leaf fans, the team that bounced them last year are off to their worst start in franchise history. The Habs, and it's an old franchise, so that says a lot. They're 6-15-2 to start the year. Of course, they cleaned house over the weekend. They fired Mark Bergevin, assistant GM Trevor Timmins, executive VP of Public Affairs and Paul Wilson, and they hired Jeff Gordon as VP of Hockey Ops to oversee. Jeff Molson spoke this morning, and we're going to bring in Arpon Basu, Montreal Canadiens reporter for The Athletic. Arpon, to start, what were your main takeaways from the Molson press conference this morning?
Well, the big one being that, he emphasized the term fresh start. Bringing in Jeff Gordon is not a move that is made lightly. He's American. He's a unilingual Anglophone. Can't speak French, which is a job requirement for any general manager of the Canadiens and is an important one that Jeff Molson considers very important. So he spent a lot of time emphasizing the fact that this is a two-person job and that the second person, the general manager, who has not been named yet, will be able to speak French. So, take that for what it's worth. I mean, I think he had to say that because the reality is that Jeff Gordon, I don't think, is coming in here to just simply be an advisor or some sort of passive voice in hockey operations. It's quite clear he's coming in to run the operation. And Jeff Molson himself made that clear when he was asked specific questions about what's going to happen hockey operations-wise. How's the scouting department going to look? Because their head scout was fired, Trevor Timmins. What are the criteria for the new general manager? All these questions he deferred to when Jeff Gordon would be in town and speaking to the media and recommended that we ask him. So it's pretty clear who's running the operation here, and Jeff Molson had to tiptoe that subject because it's a sensitive one in the market here, and so it's a new structure for the team. But I don't think there's any doubt that Jeff Gordon's the man running the Canadiens right now.
Arpon, how do you look back on the Bergevin era here in Montreal?
It's mitigated. I mean, there was some success to a certain extent, but it seemed to be, they seem to be treading water a lot. They've been consistently competitive. They were a playoff team for most of the years that Mark Bergevin was running the team. Some would say, and rightly so. And I think Jeff Molson even pointed out that over the last few years, those playoff appearances had asterisks. Obviously they got into the COVID playoffs as the 24th ranked team in the league, the worst team to make the playoffs, and have managed to eliminate the Penguins and show some good things there. And then even last year with the with the Canadian division and how poorly the regular season went for the Canadiens, they probably wouldn't have been in the playoffs, and then obviously went on the run that they did once they got in. So, I think last year really kind of sums up Mark Bergevin's time, an imperfect team that had some good flashes, but he was not able to build a team that anyone would ever consider a true Stanley Cup contender over his time here, maybe with the exception of maybe one or two of the 10 years or 9 years he was there.
Arpon, this is a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, as you just alluded to, but a lot of the talk in the wake of Mark Bergevin's firing is really the heavily criticized drafting of Logan Mailloux this past summer. How much will that choice affect his legacy as GM of the Canadiens?
I don't know. It's definitely part of the story, and I think it's definitely, which is why my answer on Mark Bergevin and how he'll be remembered is mixed. That was a poor decision. Jeff Molson has admitted as much and took responsibility for that decision, as he should have, because he was in a position to nix that. He, as the owner and president of the team, when he was aware that the team was going to draft Logan Mailloux, and he was aware of the story around it. And so it was good of him to own that, because it's not good. You can't just pass the buck on that. He ultimately made that decision, but Mark Bergevin's recommendation on that, Trevor Timmins' recommendation on that, and even firing Paul Wilson, who was in charge of running the public relations aspect of that, that one incident, that one poor decision, really tarnished the brand of the Montreal Canadiens, I think, to a great extent, and Jeff Molson acknowledged that. And then there's many things that the organization is doing to try and make up for that, but the damage is done to a certain extent. So, to answer your question, I think it's a big part of what will be remembered about Marc Bergevin. Now, a lot of that is also on Logan Mailloux. We don't know how that story is going to play out, what's going to come of his career, but I think the damage to the brand was a lasting one. I think a lot of people were very disappointed that the Canadians just seemed completely unaware of how impactful that decision would be on a lot of fans, not just female fans, but just fans in general who were disappointed in what was ultimately a moral decision on their part.
In conversation with Arpem Basu, Montreal Canadiens reporter for The Athletic, GM Marc Bergevin let go over the weekend. Jeff Gorton taking over as VP of Hockey Operations, and they say that they're going to be looking for a general manager here. Are there any early front runners for the job, and what is the importance of having a bilingual GM in Montreal specifically?
Front runners for the job. There's a few names that are out there. Matthew Darche, who's working with, who's the assistant general manager in, well, that's not his exact title, but he's essentially an assistant general manager in Tampa, working under Julien Brisebois, who was someone the organization let get away and who they would probably love to have now. But Matthew Darche is probably a pretty strong candidate. Martin Madden Jr., assistant GM in Anaheim, but heavy background in amateur scouting and one of the better drafting records in the NHL. Are a couple of the names that are kind of floating out there. I know that Patrick Roy's name is going to float out. I don't know how realistic that is or how likely that is to happen. But I think, based on what Jeff Molson said, they're going to be casting a wide net, and they're not strictly going to limit themselves to quote unquote hockey men. They're the fact that Jeff Gorton fills that criteria that Jeff Molson said they hope the GM can complement that skill set and maybe be someone like a bit of an outside the box candidate, which is interesting to hear. And the importance of being bilingual, I know a lot of people don't understand it and they feel that this really hinders the Canadians, and maybe that's true, but I don't think people understand how many people in Quebec, not in Montreal necessarily, but outside of Montreal and the rest of the province, how many people don't understand a word of English. And so, that is the grassroots, that is the heart of the Montreal Canadiens fan base to a large extent, something that the Canadians take very seriously. And so they want their decision makers, i.e. their coach, their GM, and their owner, to be able to communicate with those fans in a language that they understand without using translators or dubbing it or having subtitles or what have you. So it's just a question of respect to a province where language is at the heart of their identity, their culture, which is quite separate and different from the rest of Canada. And so, I think it's important for the Canadians to take that seriously, because the place of the Canadians within that culture and within that identity is also important.
At his press conference this morning, Molson was also emphasizing the importance of diversity as a priority in the organization going forward. I saw this getting floated around on Twitter this morning that maybe there was potential for a female GM to be put forward sometime soon. Could you see maybe names like Caroline Hulette or Kim St. Pierre getting thrown around in the mix as potential candidates here?
I mean, I would hope so. Danielle Goyette could be another one. I mean, there's lots of possibilities, and based on what Jeff Molson said today, that no doors are going to be closed. So, he viewed the diversity component of specifically his hockey operations department as an opportunity, and that's somewhere that's an area that they want to improve. They want to get better, and that having different perspectives could help the team in the long run. And so I think having a woman serve as general manager or in some other capacity in the front office and hockey operations, according to Jeff Molson, is a priority. He didn't speak specifically to hiring women, but having a more diverse group, whether that's people of color, whether that's women, we'll see. But I would hope that what that meant is that women, with the rich history of women hockey players from Quebec, francophones who've been part of Olympic teams, won Olympic gold and been and are a part of the rich history of women's hockey in Canada, having access to that group, I would hope that they would avail themselves of it, that there would be interviews, that there would be some possibility of that happening. But, I don't think Jeff Molson didn't speak specifically to that. But his commitment to having a more diverse group is definitely something he's going to be held to, because he made it one of his, I think there were like 4 priorities he mentioned as far as what needs to change, and that was one of them. So we'll see where that goes. But I think that, I'm hopeful that they will actually give serious consideration to adding a woman in a major role, if not the one of general manager, but hopefully even general manager. They should be in consideration.
Yeah, I think that'd be really monumental for the sport of hockey as well. Arpon, thank you so much for doing this.
All right, my pleasure, guys.